Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Flash. Great episode, a lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we have Mina in her, fast track suit, which Barry ends up saying, like, oh no, later on she's like, oh, I don't have a superhero name, you already have it. It's like, okay. First and foremost, I should also, to me, that suit she has, obviously it's very, Flash-inspired, just different colors, but it kind of makes me think of a Black Cat suit from, Spider-Man's a Black Cat. It kind of reminds me of that. I don't know why. Just certain parts of that design. I think that this silver and the black, because I think it probably kind of slightly reminds me of the suit she has in the Marvel Spider-Man game. I think that's probably why it makes me think of that a little bit. But just the silver and black like that. But regardless, Mina's pushing herself super hard because she wants to prove, no, I can be a hero. But at first she never really goes into it because she stops herself from really explaining, okay, this is what I'm aiming for, and she stopped because she just says, I don't have what it takes to be a hero. And I think Barry would understand. Well, first and foremost, he's been in her shoes. It's not like you're going to be able to immediately get there. He had to explain it to original timeline Nora too, that in his beginning stages of being a hero, he didn't succeed from the very beginning. He stumbled. He still stumbles from time to time. Luckily, he has people around to help him up. But he showed Mina, right, I'm just an ordinary person. All it takes is, people to rise up when the opportunities arrive. And with this suit, this is your opportunity. And I love, she's like, damn, that's good. And he's like, I have my moments. I thought that was a really neat moment between them. But even despite all that, Mina keeps training harder and harder. But it isn't just about living up to what Barry expects of her. It's because she's living out Eobard's dream. She's like, I never wanted to be a speedster. I just wanted to share meta abilities with the rest of the world so people can heal their own bodies and stuff. This is more so Eobard's dream that she's kind of living out, and she's worried that now that she's playing the role of a hero, she's kind of trying to not let him down by living up, she kind of has to live out this dream for both of them, but she's also scared she's going to lose her dream, but in a process. But for Eobard, it's no. The fact is, doing what you're doing, sharing yourself as a hero with all of us, you are doing the same thing. It is the same dream. You are saving people, you are helping people by sharing yourself, by being that hero. So, that dream of yours hasn't gone away, There's a reason why, I think everything happens for a reason. Her getting her powers, it being her instead of Eobard, which we'll kind of get to that later, but some interesting stuff all around. First and foremost, Iris replacing 2049 Iris with 2022 Iris, and she's actually stuck here now because of the negative tachyons in her prevent her from leaving, because that's what's at the heart of all of this time sickness, because they still didn't know where she got it from. Well, we soon discovered, picking up with Dion on Lian Yu, he ends up killing Eobard. And I was like, the moment he's like, oh yeah, you'll get what you deserve. I was like, is he about to, and what's the price it's going to pay? I was like, oh, is it going to be your soul? It's like, well, does Eobard even have a soul? But he's like, no, your life. And then kills Eobard. I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting it. I thought you legitimately were going to help him, but he was talking about his destiny and stuff. And then Dion, Bashir, all the forces with the exception of Nora show up, except they're not the positive forces, they're the negative forces, which I guess in the grand scheme it would make sense. But it turns out we're getting everything coming together, finally figuring out what this has always been about. When Barry took Eobard's speed, he basically erased the negative force in the process, and this is them getting payback on Barry. To be fair, this plan has kind of been active for a while, but it didn't really kick in until now. Earlier, I mean. Because Dion was fine up to a certain point, and then the time sickness kind of spread to him, and he started acting differently. It's because he's been, which I love the representation of the negative speed, because it reminds me of the Zoom thing of because Zoom's the only one who had the whole black eye situation, because Eobard had the red thing, and so did Mina, because that was more like, I guess, just the regular negative speed force. But I guess like the negative tachyons in the others just manifests itself as the black eyes. But it seems like their plan was to kill Thawne, and Eobard's the last Thawne in existence, because he's kind of a special case. So I was like, right, so wiping him out, what does that do? And the thought process was, maybe if they kill the last Thawne, that maybe it could help resuscitate and bring back the negative force. Because it's like, right, as long as he's around, he's basically draining them. They're a lot weaker, because his very existence without the negative speed force, because he's the avatar, and now that he no longer had, like, the speed force is probably like not there anymore, and because of that, the foundation of the other forces are starting to fall apart, you know, on the negative side of things as well. So because of that, I guess it's almost like an infected wound, and Eobard is the wound that basically the infection of not having the speed force is spreading to the negative speed force. Not having it is spreading to the others. I guess maybe that's how it's kind of justified on like why him being existing is a weakness to them. So they're planning on trying to kill him. But I love that, like, obviously Dion with the Steel Force is able to stop them in their tracks. But I love that Barry comes at the last second, and Dion tries to stop Barry, but then Barry starts moving a little bit. I'm like, yeah. Because it's like, right, this isn't the same. This Barry is faster. And I guess in that moment, probably like calculating for everything, he was probably, because he's still super fast. So in that moment, he was probably able to like let off some electricity before he was completely frozen. And so it finally like releases. But the problem is the forces have been kind of, well, because he's interacting with the negative speed force, it's draining on his powers even more so than his interactions with Mina previously. So, and they're talking about, obviously he has to pay for what happened to the negative speed force. So now they're trying to come up with a way to handle all this, because like, well, Cecile's all dealing with, well, the fact of the matter is, I love Rosa just like showing up at her house being like, yo, I've been tailing you. I'm like, wait, was she the purple haired person? Because it was definitely purple hair and not blonde, but maybe it was just the lighting. But I'm like, oh, so was that her? Well, because she was in the area at the time. But I'm like, that has to be somebody else, right? But Rosa was like in the area at that time that Cecile went doing her vigilante, hero thing last time, and now her powers, because she was like, oh, now I can like give people vertigo because she has Top's powers now. Well, because she kind of psychically took them, and you're like, wait. So can she just take psychic meta powers, or is it potentially she can absorb all abilities? Which is interesting, because like, well, because Kramer has the mimic ability, it seems Cecile could straight up take powers, but once again, it might just be psychic powers. Or maybe like all powers to some extent are tied to, I don't know. It seems like it's just psychic powers, but if she can expand that to other powers, that can make her extremely dangerous. Because they later on go see the Queen from, the Hearts gang, and she ends up taking her telepathy as well. And Rosa's like, that means you might just be the strongest meta in the world if you're able to just, you're not just borrowing, you're just straight up, because it's not mimicking like Kramer, because Kramer can only mimic one ability at a time and only for a short period of time. She's not just mimicking these abilities, she's taking them from people and making them just kind of human. So it's like, well, you'd assume she could give them back, but she has telepathy, and she also has vertigo. She has Top's vertigo ability. So once again, what else can she take? And it's like, once again, like, what is happening to her? The fact is that this is happening now while everything is going on. The timing can't be accidental. Plus, there's all this happening. Plus, Mark, and we get a little bit with Mark and Caitlin this episode, and they're continuing their process to bring Frost back to life. So once again, I'm just super scared, because I'm like, that's going to go super sideways. But it seems like we might be going back to, at least temporarily, to if they are able to bring Frost back, which God knows what could happen. Either Caitlin could end up disappearing and it just becomes Frostbody because she's the only consciousness, and she becomes the dominant consciousness, and Caitlin becomes like a more quieter voice maybe now because of that. Or, you know, like I said, maybe it's going back to it being kind of almost somewhat even split, like back to when we first got introduced to the fact is that Caitlyn's always been a meta, she just never knew it. So them occupying the same body until they can get her a new body. So, but once again, I'm scared about the whole Frankenstein route of it. Like, yeah, there's no way this is going to have a happy ending. It's not going to work the way you want it to. There's going to be consequences, because it's like, right, you have to accept death. It's the sucky aspect of life, but you kind of have to accept it. But we'll see. Because obviously there's an asterisk to that when you have time travel kind of playing a role in it. And especially the way this episode plays out, you're like, is that truly the case? I don't know. So we might have Frost back in the mix, maybe. Because Team Flash is kind of, you know, they have Chester and they have Allegra, but going up against what is essentially 3 gods, it's not going to be the easiest thing. Because previously they took on the gods basically like one at a time, somewhat, you know? So it was never really like all of them at once, and they were able to kind of, you know, use, as people might refer to it as, talk no jutsu. Just being able to talk it out and just reach out to them. So this situation is going to be different, because the negative force is like, no, we want you dead. We want you to pay. We want you to suffer. So we're going balls to the wall, like taking you down. So there's all of that. Barry ends up suggesting, well, Mina wanting to share her power with Eobard. It's like, well, you could actually do that. Which I'm like, well, it is a negative speed force that they're tapping into. So I'm like, what should we let Eobard? Was like, to be fair, this is a different Eobard. This is an Eobard that doesn't have his memories. He doesn't have all the hatred for Barry. This Eobard found love. He's basically a new person. So, but you're like, I mean, once again, like, I guess there was always a possibility is like his memories could have gotten restored, but he's kind of a blank slate because he's given this new opportunity, this new chance. So, and Barry ends up giving him his ring, being like, yeah, you're going to need this. I'm like, ugh, who would have thought Barry Allen would basically, I mean, he's had to, still, that's kind of crazy thinking about like, right, you're going to be responsible for, you're kind of having to work together with your worst nemesis, but to him, it's like, right, the Eobard I hate is gone. He's dead now. But you're not that same Eobard. He dealt with that last episode, so it's like, right, still got to be weird giving him the old suit, you know? Which I think it's interesting because, like, right, just earlier this season, Barry was in Eobard's shoes. He was the Reverse Flash for a time, so, during Armageddon, so. But he ends up getting, luckily, he's saying that Mina and Eobard, their love for each other, they can be each other's lightning rod, that's going to ground them, and that love needs to be what they hold on to, and not let the negative emotions consume them. And luckily, it works out. And so, Cecile, Chester, and Allegra try to buy as much time, but once again, they're still against speedster gods, forces. But luckily, our trio speedsters show up. Once again, I always love just out of nowhere they'll do like some very like the way Barry just like went past one, spiraled, like kind of like cartwheel spiraled, and then like took both of them down, took 2 forces down. Mina and Eobard both go towards Dion, and their hands get closer to him, and then like shock him. I'm like, once again, the speedster stuff is so good. But it's once again, they're both, all of them are in a weakened state. And yes, the forces are in weakened state, but they're weaker gods versus weaker humans. So that doesn't bode well for our heroes. So at the same time, everything's happening. Nora and Joan and Bart are looking after Iris in the future, because if she has one more like bad like attack from the time sickness, it could end up killing her. But time is changing. Like now that she kind of has like the still force in her and the sickness and everything, it's making her see that what this was all about. You know, because they were thinking the entire time Eobard was going to be the sacrifice, but he wasn't. Turns out the sacrifice was Nora, because like Barry was building up speed, trying to get like a supercharged lightning strike to kind of go in all at once. And in that moment, Dion summoned Iris. My initial thought was, oh, was the point to kill Iris? Because I was like, were they trying to make Barry their avatar now, like, right, making, which would be very poetic. Once again, he had just been the Reverse Flash like earlier in the season, and so it adds another layer to that in that regard too. But I was wondering that what's the point going to making Barry kill the woman he loves to kill his lightning rod, and in that moment he'd give into his negative emotions and become the next avatar for the Speed Force, but the negative Speed Force. But it was about killing Iris because she was the sacrifice. But then Dion was like, she's not the only one. I'm like, well, that makes sense, because if Iris dies, that means Bart and Nora were never born. So, but then Iris turned into the Steel Force, and then she turned into energy and went inside Eobard. You're like, what the hell? Then he starts ripping his face off, and lo and behold, it was me, Barry. It was me all along. Which, yes, it makes you think about the meme. The whole oh yeah, I chirped you off at super speed. But it makes me think of that. It was me, Barry. It kind of makes me think of that. But now he's been resurrected. So once again, I don't fully get how that works. I guess basically when Dion killed Eobard, he was, maybe the time sickness has always been like a piece of Eobard just ruminating inside of Iris, and that's what's inside of Iris just needed to be jump started. So Barry's lightning didn't just kill Iris, it jump started Eobard inside of it, and it's like, right, that needs a vessel. So because the whole ripping through his face, once again, they'll probably explain it in the next episode, but I'm trying to rack my brain around the explanation for that. Like I said, I guess it's like that's why. It's specifically to hurt Barry to make him pay, but also it had to be. I guess they needed a human host to to house all that energy and to be that. Ironically, his lightning rod in that moment and absorb all that energy, and I think that's what resurrected the negative Speed Force, and it went back to Eobard. So it wasn't just obviously the Eobard they knew getting resurrected, because I guess in that moment, like I said, not unless it's suggesting a fragment of the Eobard Barry's always known existed there. That Eobard has always been inside of Iris the entire time, and everything has been going towards this plan of resurrecting him and the negative Speed Force. So when Dion killed him, maybe he did that because he was absorbing all the life that Eobard had, his subconsciousness in that moment, and then with this Iris situation implanted that so everything went into Eobard, which is heartbreaking for Mina, watching the man she loves literally get peeled away like a mask. So the Eobard she knows is gone. Is he going forever? Probably, which would be severely heartbreaking. Now, once again, Iris might be gone forever. Maybe there's a way to undo this. Time takes a little while to solidify, so Bart and Nora might have a little bit of time before they potentially vanish, but Barry also doesn't know where the positive forces are. They're hidden away by the negative forces, so how this is all going to play out, I have no idea. You're hoping they're going to win, but I'm like, yeah, but what's the outcome of this going to be is the biggest question of all. It's definitely going to be interesting to see where all this ends up taking us. The next episode is the season finale. It's going to be wild to see how this ultimately all plays. Like I said, I don't know what to fully expect from this season finale. It's going to be weird, and once again, I'm so interested in what the explanation is for what the hell just happened. I gave it my best shot, but even I'm talking out of my ass about what that is, so I don't know what to fully expect from that. So once again, we'll just have to wait and see. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.